into the internals of the Bacpac file almost right now. This session is not about theory, but only about practical tricks and advanced tips. Before I start the session, I want to show you a short illustration. It will give some time to those who join us a bit late, and it is a great trigger to understand why you should be here in the next 50 minutes. So just let me share. Can you see my virtual machine?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So for the sake of the demo, I will use a virtual machine. I installed in advance several instances of SQL Server on premises, and if I will need, I will also use Azure database. This machine basically illustrates different environment or multiple environment, but I put everything in one machine. We will discuss how we can copy a database from one environment into the other. Let's go and start with SQL Server 2019. Okay, I will create a new database. So we will start from a clean, and I will create a simple table in the database. So you see the code, and I will put some row, the simplest that we can do. Awesome. Our goal, as I said, is to create a copy of the database, but in a different environment. The most common solution is to use backup. We can back up the database in the source environment, and then we can restore it in the target environment. And this is what we are going to try to do. So let's back up our database. It's very simple database, very small. The backup created very fast. So what I will do now, I will copy the backup file to a different folder, to the folder of SQL Server 2016. It illustrates a situation that I actually copied the backup file to a different machine. So this is the file that we have just created. Let's cut it and move it here. Okay. And the next step, as I said, is to restore the database in the new environment. So let's connect to the new environment. Execute. I actually assumed that this is expected. We get error since the version of the backup was 2019. And it is incompatible with older version of SQL Server. We don't have a forward compatibility, only backward. Let's move to Bacpac File. I will now do the same with Bacpac File, but one word before this regarding backup. Backup is an internal process which provides a disaster recovery solution. This means that a backup should provide a solution to restore the system exactly to the same as it was in specific point in time. It is not solving our need to move the database between different environments. So as I said, we will try our best using Bacpac File now. Going back to 2019. you can notice that a Bacpac is created in steps, starting from exporting the database, then the schema, exporting the data, and processing the tables. This is a very important point to remember for the next demo. Let's make a copy now of the database in our 2016 environment using this Bacpac file. You can notice again that the Bacpac file the Bacpac file work in steps, and we see that everything is working okay. This is the power of Bacpac file. The Bacpac file is working step by step, creating the database, create the schema, import the data. Let's execute it just to see, and create the indexes at the end. So Bacpac basically is the main tool to create a copy of the database on a different environment. It is used, for example, to create a copy of a database between Azure database and on-premises SQL Server and vice versa. I want to do the same demo, but with a little bit more complex database. So again, I will go to the SQL Server 2019. We already have this session related to it. And this time I will create a database which includes two simple tables, exactly like before, but in addition, I will create several tables which are using a feature that's called graph. This is a new feature, not so new now. It was added in SQL Server 2017. So let me copy the code. It's a bit long code, and then I will go over it. C, Control V. Okay, let's go very fast on the code. As you see, I create a new database and I will use it. Notice the word graph just to find the database fast. I create a simple table exactly like before and put some data inside. Now, very important to remember that I create another simple table, exactly the same structure. Remember the names. The first table was A1, it's important, and the second table, it's T1. And next, I will create some tables which are related to graph feature. You can see the word node. Awesome. This is the new database. Again, I can try to create a backup and then restore it. I will not do it. I will skip this demo because you already know that backup and restore didn't work even when we had a very simple database. And now we are using a feature which is not supported in the new environment. We are going to use SQL Server 2016. So let's go straight to show you how Bacpac will behave this time. So let's create our Bacpac. Basically, nothing new here. We can see the steps that the Bacpac file is created. It finished well, as expected. And now we will move to SQL Server 2016 in order to create the new database. The database is very small, it should finish very fast, but how it will finish, can you guess? Oops, we are getting errors. Let's take a glance on the error that we get. Notice the name of the entity, the table, which is related to the errors. So you see this error, talk about this table, and only this table. This error speak only about this table. Oh, it's the same table. And the last error, again, it's talking about the same table. This table is one of the tables which are related to the graph feature, which is not supported in SQL Server 2016. But our database included a multiple graph table. So why in the hell we only get error regarding one specific table? We will dive into the errors further in the session. Just at this point, if you will try to get support at Microsoft channels from experience, for example, if you will try to go to the forums, then the solution which you will probably get is to create a copy of the live database in the production environment. Then, using the copy, you can remove all the tables which are not supported in the new environment, and then you can create a new Bacpac file. This means that in our case, you know only about one table, because we got error that say that we have a problem with one table. So you will go to the database, create a copy of the database, remove one table, create a Bacpac file, and backward and forward, you are going to do this procedure until you will clean all the database. This is crazy. Please don't do it. Listen to my lecture, and I will show you what it can we do. Moreover, think about situation that we do not want to create a copy only to one environment. Maybe we have several applications in several environments, maybe several development team. So if we want to create a copy in multiple environments, we actually need to create, if we are going according to the common or the normal procedure, then we will need to create a separate file for each one of the target environment. Using this approach is basically very problematic. Today, I will show you a simple way. Once we will dive into the Bacpac file, we will be able to edit the Bacpac file itself manually. By the way, check this out. Something nice. Let's go to the database. You can see that a new database was created in SQL Server 2016. And even part of the tables were created. You remember I told you the names of a simple table? There was one table, A1, which was created. And there is one table named T1, which was not created. Can you guess why T1 was not created and A1 was created? Remember the alphabet order. This is a side note. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. One second. Okay. As we saw in the demo, database backup file cannot provide the same support that we need in order to copy database between environments, while Bacpac file gave us better solution. Database backup and restore is internal process of the SQL Server, and it's work in the database level. Bacpac file is totally different story. A Bacpac file includes the information about the schema and the data. The file itself is created using external tool and not by the SQL Server. The tool simply communicates like any other application. You communicate with the server using simple queries. It checks what is the schema of the database. It checks what tables and what entities we have. And according to this, is going to build the file with all the information about the entities one by one. This means that the data might not be consistent across tables. For example, think about this situation. If the transactions execute during the time that we create the Bacpac file, we're working step by step. Some of the tables already created for us in the Bacpac file, while others are not. This might lead to an error when we will try to use the Bacpac file, and it will probably lead to inconsistency between the information of the tables. The goal of the Bacpac file is to create a file which includes the information on how to create a new database with the same structure and data. It is not a backup solution, and certainly this is not a disaster recovery solution. The reason that it is so powerful for our task of copy database between different environments is exactly this. The tool simply execute queries one after the other. This is why we got only error regarding one table. The first error that the tool find, it simply stops the process. And this is why T1, table with the name T1, which was in our process at the end, after the graph tables, did not create it, even though this table was simple table. So remember that Bacpac file work step by step, and it will stop the minute it get an error. What can we do with this information? Think about how useful it can be if you could edit the Bacpac file and fix the information inside the file after it was already created. In fact, this is the trigger why you should not sleep during the next 30 minutes while we learn about the internals of the Bacpac file and how we can edit it manually. And this is not the only thing that I'm going to speak about. I will also provide you some tips to improve performance. So this is a good time actually to present myself, which I haven't done till now. So my name is Ronen Ariely. I'm from Israel. I'm a senior consultant and an architect in the field of application development and data platform. My focus is on designing enterprise level platforms and thinking outside the box. I really love to dig into the internals. This means to examine the undocumented level of products and information and implement it. It's worth nothing if you cannot implement it in practical uses like improving performance. Are there any questions at this time before we are diving to the file itself? Hassan, can you check the questions?
Oh, Yes, I am just checking. No, till now I don't have any question.
Okay. To learn about the Bacpac file, I will use the second Bacpac file, the more complex one, which we already created. It will save time. And I will give you the magic in one sentence. The magic point is to understand that Bacpac file is simply a zip package with different extension. So let's go to our server and go to our Bacpac file. This was a more complex Bacpac file. And check what I'm doing. I only replace this with zip. This is the main magic today. Yeah, this is a simple zip file. You see, I can go inside. And now let's extract it. So we will actually learn what we have there, and we will start to change and edit the file. Okay. We can now, after we uncompress it, start to check file by file and folder. I will use Notepad. Sorry. I will use Notepad++ to examine the content of those files. Let's copy them here. As you can see, those are XML files. And I will start with this file, the content types. There is a small plugin that will help us to make this file more readable, pretty print. And what is this file? The content types include the information about which types of files we have in the package. For example, in this package, or in any Bacpac package, we have XML files. You already know, those are the files that I just opened. We have a BCP file. BCP, you know, it's the files that we use in order to import data. Yes, those are the files that include the data, and they are sitting in this folder. And we have Rails files, which are sitting in this folder. So I think that this is clear, and we can move to our next file, data metadata. Actually, before I go to this, I mentioned that it's very important to understand what files we have here, but Bacpac file will always have the same type of file. Why this is important? Because other package like Bacpac are using exactly the same mechanism, but they might include different types of file. To make it more clear, there is Bacpac with a D, and today we spoke about Bacpac with a B. Okay, so those are two different type of packages, and there are other packages, and they are all using the same mechanism. Let's see, for example, a Bacpac file. So let's create a Bacpac file now, very fast. Let me just copy the path. And we will go back to the database. We are talking about 2019. This is the graph. And this time, instead of export, which will create the Bacpac, I'm using this one, which will create a Bacpac. Notice that we have a different form. We have different option to input when we're creating the Bacpac. First of all, we have versions, which we didn't have before, and we have description. This is very important, as I will mention in a second. It's not related to our lecture directly. So let's create our new file here. Next. Only one step. Let's see why. Finished. Let's open the file. Where's our file? Here. This is the new file. And again, this is a zip file. By the way, for some reason, and I don't know how to explain it, Microsoft documentation about the Bacpac file explicitly explain that Bacpac file is a zip file, but I didn't find any such documented information regarding the Bacpac file. So this is more secret for no reason. It is not documented that Bacpac file is also a simple zip file, and actually they are almost the same, as we will see in a second. And we will even be able to take a Bacpac file and change it to be a Bacpac file by editing manual. Okay, so let's open this, extract, and let's compare the content. So this is the Bacpac file, and you can see that we have only XML files. We don't have the folders because Bacpac file only gives us the option to create the schema without the data. And you remember these content types? So let's open it and see the difference. And as expected, the Bacpac file only include one type of file, XML. So it's very important to understand what the content type file means. Moving to the next file, we have the DAC metadata. This file includes information about the version of the package. It allows us to manage versioning, which is not relevant to Bacpac usually, but we saw that when we created a Bacpac, we could actually put the version, and this is where it will go. So the files are exactly in the same format. If it was a Bacpac file, we could control the version. This is outside the scope of today's session, but if you did not know about it, then you must know that we can manage versionings of databases, like developers are managing versionings of code files. And we can do it using Bacpac file, and of course, a versioning application like GitHub. Okay, so let's move to the next file, the model file. This file includes all the information about all the entities, including inside our database. We can see the information about each table and each column in the table. Why should we understand the content of this model file? I think this is clear. Since now we can actually edit this file manually and avoid errors like graph tables which are not supported. We can delete it directly from this file. Moreover, we don't need to delete it. So my first tip for today as a tip is that there is no reason to copy the database and recreate a new Bacpac file after you start to delete it. Instead, you can edit the Bacpac file manually and remove or fix the information that is not supported. For example, you can remove the tables which are related to graph features manually. But remember that if you do so, then you will lose the tables in the new database. So I will show you another trick, which there is no other way to do. We can edit the information and change the type of the table, and then we can use the Bacpac file and the tables will work. So in order to do this, let's find our problematic table. I know that we have a graph table, so let's simply search the word node. And you see, this is our table. This is the table that was failed, if you remember from the error message. And this is the problem. when the tools that try to import the Bacpac file start to work, they come to this point and they create a query that create a table which use a node feature, but it's not supported in SQL Server 2016. Now, I cannot see your face, but if this was a lecture in front of people, I would ask you at this point, can you guess how I can fix this file in one click and make it fit to SQL Server 2016? So I will not lose any data? I will give you the answer. I click enter and I delete this line. That's all. This is so simple. I have a feature which is not supported. I will delete it. I will make this table a simple table. So I will not lose any data. Okay, I need to make some more fixing. For example, a graph table include a special column. So let me find the column. Control C, Control V, find next. Okay. This is a simple special column. We are not learning about graph today, but again, in order to make this file fit for SQL Server 2016, we need to remove the property which is not fit. I don't care about the name of the table, even though it uses a $sign. All I need to do is to remove this. This is the feature that related to the graph. And this way I can go and fix all the file, and then I can import it without any problem, without losing any data. Of course, the tables will become a simple table and not graph table. So understanding the internals provide you huge practical power. This is not a theoretical session. This is not a theoretical discussion. Oh, I have another tip for you. Let's call it tip number 2 for today. This is something that I actually find out or I notice it by mistake. You remember that when we imported the Bacpac file, part of the entities, like the table A1, were created, and part of the entities were not created. So there is a simple way that can help us examine if it's a big database with a lot of entities. We can use a simple way to examine the entities which were problematic. How we do it? Very simple. I will create a new Bacpac file from the new environment. This Bacpac file includes only part of the entities, only those that succeeded to create it. And then I'm going to Notepad++ or to any editor, Visual Studio can work as well, and you can compare the two files, and you can actually find the entities which blocked us from import the Bacpac file. So this is a huge tool for troubleshooting Bacpac issues. Okay, moving to the next file. We don't have too much time. So the final file between the four is the origin file. This file includes the information about the environment of the database. For example, the SQL Server version should be here somewhere, here. And it includes some statistic. In some cases, using the Bacpac file in the Azure, for example, fail since the version of the SQL Server does not fit. If all the features that we are actually using in our database fit for both environment, so we can cheat the tool and simply change the information here. Okay, it say that we are using SQL Server 2019. What do I care? Let's put 2014, 2016. You can cheat the tool that use the Bacpac file, and in some cases, This is all you need in order to import the Bacpac file and bypass an issue. What about the folders here? I almost forget that we also have folders. We have two folders. The first one is the data, as I mentioned. This includes all the BCP file, which include the data itself. For each table which we added to the Bacpac file, you will see a subfolder here. Here, table A1, you remember, and table T1 at the end. Inside each subfolder, you will have a BCP file. You know what this means? This means that I actually can use the Bacpac file, take outside the BCP file, and use simple BCP import, bulk import to a different table. There are a lot of uses if you can actually break apart the Bacpac file. And we have another folder called Rails. Inside the Rails folder, we have a file which, for some reason, again, don't ask me, I cannot understand some of the decisions that Microsoft do. For some reason, this file does not include extension of XML, but believe me, this is simple XML file. Let's see it. And let's open it. As you can see, it is XML file, and we can examine what we have here. What is it? Pretty print. Okay. So what do we have in the Rails? Rails come from relation. This file includes all the relations between the tables that we want to import, which we exported, and the location, the path to the data itself, to the BCP file. So this is what we have. You see table A1, the file tells us, oh, this content will be here in this BCP file. And the table fish post, this will be the information here, and etc. So if I want to remove a table, don't forget that I need to remove it from here as well. We just need to fix the relation and take out a table that we want to remove from the import of the Bacpac file. Once we finish all this editing, okay, you edit a file, you delete, you add something maybe, we need to close it. How do we close it? Very simple. We remember that this is basically a zip file. So after we finish, all we need to do is to compress it. Notice that I'm using 7-zip. I will mention it as another tip at the end of the lecture. And after we finish and we create a zip file, just give it again the name and Bacpac, take it to the new environment, and you want the system. Actually, you cheated the system because it's undocumented. Okay, this is a good time for a question again, if there are any, and I will move to the presentation. So if there are questions, you are welcome to present them. Where is my presentation?
One question come is that is Bacpac support single instance or single database? For
Bacpac is not for instance, it's database level.
Only database level.
Only for database. Yes, you can work with a managed instance in the Azure, but you create a Bacpac for a database, not for the instance.
Oh, so
okay.
So for migrating multiple database, we have to do individually, right?
Yes, for each database, you create a package of Bacpac and then you import it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, there are many options to create copy of database from one place to another. In this table, I only show few common options. Let's go over them very fast. What is the time now? Okay, I got confused with the time. How much time do we have?
Here in Bangladesh, it is 6 p.m. Just 2 minutes past.
Again, sorry.
Now it is 6 p.m. here in Bangladesh.
Okay, so we have about 20 minutes more. That's
Okay.
great. This is on time. Let's go fast over this table that I've created. Just to summarize several of the options. There was an option that added a few years ago, which is a part of TSQL. We can use the query create database as copy. This is very useful. In the right place, you can see that I mark if this helps us to actually move data and schema. So we see a V, it is useful, and we can see that it helps us to move the data from Azure database to Azure database. A mark Azure, L mark local. Copy is create database as copy does not support local on-premise SQL Server, only from Azure to Azure. The next option we already saw today, it's using the Bacpac file. Bacpac, as we saw, only include the schema. So it works for all the environment, from Azure to Azure, Azure to local Azure, but only for the schema. Bacpac, we have V all over. It will work for, it should work for database and schema as well. Replication, another option which personally I love it a lot, but replication can only work from the local to the Azure, or from the local to the local. Why? Because when we are using replication, the publisher must be on premises. BCP, we saw that in the Bacpac we also have BCP, but we can work directly with BCP, back import, back export. So this will not help us to move the schema, only the data. And the link server job, there are several more. Let's move forward. In this link that you have here up, in the up side of the page, Microsoft presents some recommendation for best practice in different scenarios. But for some reason, it is very poor document. We need to add more. So I added several more scenario. In the bottom table, I added my 2 cents about more information, more scenario. Download the presentation and you can use it. I want to go over troubleshooting, which is one of the most important reasons we need to fix, to edit the Bacpac file. So let's go one by one, and I will give you the option to solve it. The best one, the first one is the most common issue that I see in the forums and with client, and this is an error that say the feature is not supported. We already saw it today. This is what we got with the graph tables. So what is the options that we have to solve this? Option one, the common one, and people will tell you copy the database, create a new database, remove the unsupported features, and create a new Bacpac. This means that we lose data and tables. Option two, remove the problematic entity from the Bacpac file, edit it. Again, this means that we will lose the tables and the data when we will use the Bacpac, but we still have the BCP files, which we took outside from the Bacpac. So we can use this as a second step and restore the new the tables, which we didn't succeed to do automatically. But we have a third option, and this is the one that I want you to use most of the time. And this is to go to the Bacpac file, not to remove the entities the tables in our case, but to fix them, as we saw, we can simply fix the properties. We can remove the property of the table and change the table to a simple table. In this option, if you use option 3, you do not lose data, you do not lose the tables, and you have a working database. Don't forget to recompress the folder to a zip file. And I'm telling you again, do not, 10 times, do not use the Windows zip tool. Use 7-zip. Why? In a second. Another scenario that we have, let's say that we have 10 different deployment teams. It can be 10, it can be 1,000. Each team usually only work on one sector, one part of our application, and each team need only a part of the database, only the tables that related to him. So what can we do to make it best work? Option 1, we can create a separate file, separate Bacpac file for each developer. I didn't show you, but when we create the Bacpac file, we can choose which table are going inside and which will not go inside. So this is one option, but do you really want to create 1,000 different Bacpac file? So option 2, as I said, we can simply create one file and then give it to all the developer and tell them, you can remove those, you can remove the other, or we can do the work for them. But we can edit the Bacpac file. Another scenario for this use. Let's say that we already have a Bacpac file. This happened to me a lot because I work with consulting and supporting. So clients come to me and say, hey, I have a Bacpac file. This is the Bacpac. Do whatever you can. I don't have that source. This is what I give you. So in a scenario that you already have the Bacpac file, now you can know that you can restore, not restore, but copy the database after you edit the file. And you can even use the BCP file directly if you want only the data. So this is another scenario. A simple trick, you can convert Bacpac file to Dhaka file. It's very simple. All you need to do is to remove the folders and fix the first file, which include the list of files which are in the package. This is very useful if you want only to manage versioning, which is not supported by default in Bacpac, but we can do it. Another tip, we can use BCP files from the Bacpac file in order to import the data to existing tables. And another one, we can improve performance. Now, this is my tip regarding the 7-zip. I told you to use 7-zip and not to use the built-in zip, because 7-zip can compress the file better than the Windows built-in zip compression, at least when we are using the default. We can gain about 20, between 1 to 20, depending on the content, 20% smaller file. So this means that we can do this trick. Even if you don't need to edit the Bacpac file, I'm telling you, you can do this always. When we have a big database, simply take the Bacpac file, uncompress it using the zip, and then recompress it using 7-zip. Now you can send it to the Azure or to any remote location through the internet, and you save about 20% of the time, which can be a lot if we are talking about big database. So this is a nice trick. I don't think that you will find anywhere in the internet that it is mentioned. We're almost at the end, so let's move to the next set of tips, which is how to prevent errors. I gave you tips until now how to fix errors, but what about what can we do to prevent it from the first time? So listen very carefully. When you create a backpack, make sure that there is no write activity. As we said, Bacpac file is not transactional consistency. If there is a write activity, then create a copy and then create a backpack from the copy. Make sure that you use the same version of the client tool. This is not related to the SQL Server. A lot of the errors are related to the fact that the tool that creates the backpack is changed over time, and it uses a different format. So if you created the backpack using SSMS 17, for example, it is best that you will import it using SSMS 17. Otherwise, you might get error that this will be the solution. Try to use content database. It will save you a lot of errors. And if all of the tips does not work for you, so you can use other tools, more powerful tools like SSIS, which does not have such issues. So this is a good time to wrap up. First of all, and above all, I want to remind you that anything that you do is always on your own responsibility. This session included a lot of undocumented information, stuff that I bring from myself. No one will guarantee that it will work. So every time that you need to do it, first of all, test it on your test environment, development environment, and only when you're sure that it will work, do it in the production, and it is on your own responsibility. So what we have done today, we show that what is Bacpac file in practical. We dived into the Bacpac file. We show the power of using the Bacpac file because it let us to copy database between different environments. We mentioned in a nutshell the difference between Bacpac and Backup, which are not the same. We examined the internal of the Bacpac file and saw how we can edit the Bacpac file. And we had a small tip regarding the zip and how to compress the Bacpac file. With that, I can basically tell you that I hope that you find this session interesting. More importantly, is that you find it practical, because now when you are going home, you can actually take what you learn here and use it on your daily work. Before we close the meeting, I would like to thank everyone who contributed to the event. And of course, I want to tell you what next. So regarding to what I'm doing next and the community, I want to mention two big events which I will speak at them. On October 3, several days from now, I will speak the global